Hey Mel, great to see
Hi.
you back. Hello. So you were going to tell us more about the second noble truth and COVID-19 and the relation, how Buddhism views this current crisis.
Okay. So coming back to the turning of the wheel of Dharma discourse again, when the Buddha talked about the second truth, he said that it's based on craving. It is because of craving. And if you look at what craving is, it's part of the it's part of one of the links in this interdependent cycle of suffering. It's a pretty significant link, and craving leads on to clinging, grasping leads on to clinging leads on to becoming leads on to birth, aging, sickness, death, and then death leads to consciousness leads to six sense spheres leads to contact leads to feeling. So it's this cycle of interdependence that one thing leads to another. What's driving that cycle is greed, ignorance, and hatred. Greed is the grasping after, clinging, craving, and yearning for almost addictions to pleasant experiences. Ignorance refers to the opposite of wisdom, which is not seeing things clearly, not apprehending things clearly, not understanding, not perceiving, not comprehending, not knowing. And hatred refers to aversion, avoidance, condemnation, rejection, and so on and so forth. It refers to pushing away. It's this craving to be rid of something. And that sometimes it manifests as subtle aversion. Sometimes it manifests as violent aggression. It is this force to move away. So when we think about the causes of COVID-19, there's two ways we can think about it. One is the way it's arisen in the world anyway, the way it's come to be, and also how it's being transmitted across the world. Another way is the way we relate to the suffering that's coming through that. And basically, if we relate to our suffering that we're experiencing with, or if we relate to the experiences that we have in relationship to COVID-19 with greed, ignorance, and hatred, then suffering will continue. In the Dhammapada, actually suffering, a bad situation will get worse. So that's in summary about what the Buddha said about the causes of suffering. And if we go into looking at how COVID-19 has appeared in the world, we can also see that greed, ignorance, and hatred is behind that as well. So they say that COVID-19 is the illness, or is the disorder arising from a virus. The virus was transmitted from being in an animal to humans. It is what I understand is that humans have consumed wildlife that has this virus within it. And the wildlife that is being consumed comes from wild jungles, and previously places that we humans wouldn't normally go. So there's an encroachment of humans into the wild jungles, into the domain and the habitat of wild animals, for whatever reason. I mean, I'm sure that there's been the absolute need to starve off starvation, for example, to encroach into the jungles to feed off wildlife. But also there must be a certain amount of greed in terms of novel cuisines or even folk medicines, for example. So that's one end of that. And another part of that is that our forests are retreating. We're losing forestry. We're losing the Amazon jungle, for example. Humans are encroaching into places where they shouldn't be going. They are the domains of other creatures. And so if you look at the Amazon jungles, for example, that is being cleared because of human greed, the greed for financial gain. They're farming animals, they're farming cattle on the lands they're chopping down in the Amazon basin. Also, they're farming soybeans because these are profitable crops. So in one level, you can think about it like that. Another way you can think about it is that we humans have an insatiable desire to travel. And in the 21st century, most of us are traveling, crisscrossing the globe all the time. Thousands of years ago, if there was a disease, it would often be contained within that particular area. These days, there's a disease arise somewhere, and it's, you know, within hours, it's somewhere else. So there's a major proliferation through ignorance of COVID-19. It's a major transmission. So now coming back to the way we feed into the suffering we already have, the way we make a bad situation worse. And there's an analogy that the Buddha made about two darts, and you probably know this analogy. The first dart, it's like we're wounded with two darts, I should say. The first dart is the inevitable suffering that we have from life. Things happen in life that we just can't avoid. You know, we do get sick, we do age, we do have taxes, we do have electricity bills, you know, we get hungry and so on. There's an inevitable suffering that's involved in just living. The second dart is what we add on to it. What we add on to it in the form of worrying about it, or in the form of ruminating about it, or creating something more than what it is. So what the Buddhist teaching can do, they can't get rid of, or they can't resolve that first dart, but they can certainly resolve the second dart. So the second dart is various manifestations of greed, ignorance, and hatred. And I'm going to talk about two tendencies that we have. These are tendencies that manifest or that feed into depression and anxiety. One tendency is we have is rumination. And this comes back to us having this big prefrontal cortex. And, you know, the prefrontal cortex is an amazing structure. You know, it's behind us planning and solving problems and relating to people and working out social relationships and so on and so forth. And in that respect, it's really, really helpful. The downside of it is that we tend to think a lot. We tend to think too much. So we can make more out of something. We can make mountains out of molehills, for example. We can have lots of second darts coming into ourselves. So rumination is this tendency to think over and over and over and over, chew over events that have happened in our lives in the past, or untoward events that are happening right now. And what happens with rumination, it tends to kind of just go off in thoughts and beliefs, and we start to believe our beliefs. Worry, on the other hand, is more about the possibility of untoward events happening in the future. It gets triggered by a sense of uncertainty. In fact, we have an experience of uncertainty about the future, and this is unpleasant. So what we do is we tend to think our way out of it. We try to think our way out of it. We try to think of solutions, and we frantically come up with solutions for the issue, but those solutions aren't sustainable, and then we go back into worrying more. When we have a solution, by the way, there's a moment of relief of the torment of uncertainty. But because it's unsustainable, we soon slip back into thinking again. So greed. So aversion, first of all, we have aversion towards uncertainty. Greed. We like to cling on to that moment of pleasure that's in the relief of the torment of worrying, a relief of the torment of uncertainty. And ignorance is that we just don't see what we're doing. We get caught into it, we become consumed by worry. So I won't give an example because it'll take too much time, but I'm sure you can see in this COVID-19 world, we have lots of rumination and lots of worry. And what is happening is that we're creating a reality that's actually not really there. We're creating a reality that's far, far distant from the actual reality of what's happening. And when we do that, we become more dysfunctional. We can't actually problem solve. We can't actually see clearly. We get caught up in, obsessive ruminations about ourselves, and we become depressed. We lack motivation. We lack the ability to concentrate, and so on. So I could go on. I could go on for hours about the causes of suffering, but I think I'll leave it at there, because you imagine going down the supermarket and something happens, and you go home, like someone transgresses you or steals your toilet paper or something like that. You go home and you ruminate, and you make more out of it than what should be made out of it. And also, you might even worry about being exposed to COVID-19, and we worry into situations that make us dysfunctional. So I think I'll leave it at that for the second noble truth, the causes of suffering.
Thank you, Mel, very much. The mind boggles really what the mind is capable of in response. And your analogy of the two darts was very helpful to illuminate that. Yeah. It also makes a lot of sense that the shelves in the supermarkets are empty. I imagine every time someone scored a packet of toilet paper rolls, that momentary relief was given, and then it was taken away.
Yeah. Reinforces it to do it next time. They make out plans how to do it, how they can get past those people, and how they can get there first. They'll go there when they're not supposed to go there. They'll go there when at 7 a.m. in the morning. Beat the crowds.
So thanks very much, and I'll see you back with our third noble truth.
Okay, thank you.